Greetings, BookTube! I'm Ryn Jackson, and you're watching Bundles and Books, a channel where I talk about books while playing Stardew Valley and fixing up the community center. Last week, I talked about 6 books on my hold shelf at the library that I wanted to try and read before the end of the year, preferably before the end of that week. And I'll link that video down below if you're interested, along with links for US libraries that allow out-of-state or out-of-country individuals to check out ebooks or audiobooks online. My goal last week was to read 3 of the 6 books if possible. Specifically, I wanted to read the books that have been on my hold shelf and available to check out the longest. Those 3 books were The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid, Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid, and The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. In the unlikely event that I had a really great reading week where I was just blazing through books, I also picked out 3 bonus books. My 3 bonus books were The Ballad of Black Tom by LaValle, One to Watch by Stayman-London, and The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. Because I haven't been having great reading weeks lately, I joked that I would be lucky to finish The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid. I blame my recent slumpiness on leaving the 2 longest books on my 2020 TBR until the end of the year and then trying to read them during the holidays. I'm going to try and avoid duplicating this problem in 2021 by reading 1 big book from my TBR each month so I don't have a ton of tomes waiting for me in November. I'm also going to try and keep my 2021 TBR from getting even farther out of hand than it already is. There are already over 40 books on it, by not buying a single book in 2021. I have an idea of how to trick myself into not spending money on books in 2021, or it might be more accurate to say how to bribe myself. I have a video coming out soon on my 2021 book budget, so be sure to subscribe if that sounds interesting to you. Anyway, that's where my thoughts and energy were going into the week. So imagine my surprise when I not only finished The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but also all 5 of the other books. Not bad for 1 week. It helped that The Ballad of Black Tom is a novella, but I'll still take it as a win. So that's enough rambling. Let me tell you about the 6 books from my TBR, whether or not I read them, and what I thought about them. Book number 1, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid. This was the book that had been on my hold shelf the longest, and it was the one book that I had been most determined to read. I'm sure most people are familiar with the broad strokes of the plot at this point. Evelyn Hugo is a reclusive Hollywood movie star of the bombshell type who is donating her gown collection to a charity auction. Monique Grant is a fashion journalist for a magazine that is clearly meant to be Vogue. She has dreams of being a serious journalist and has written some thoughtful pieces in the past. And using the pretext of the charity auction, Evelyn contacts Monique to write her authorized biography. The book is narrated by both Monique and Evelyn, although it spends much more time in Evelyn's voice, which was the right call because that's the voice the author seemed to be more sure of or more confident writing in. The book draws parallels between the racism, sexism, and homophobia that Evelyn dealt with over her career and Monique's more modern problems. I like this book more than I thought I would. I appreciated the critical look at racism, queerness, and misogyny in Hollywood and the compromises Evelyn had to make throughout her life and career because of that. Evelyn is problematic in an extremely realistic and relatable way. She makes bargains with patriarchy and white supremacy for her survival. And this is very illustrative of how we all cooperate with malevolent hierarchies because we need to live in a society where those structures still exist. In addition to that, it's well written and entertaining to read. The pacing was quick in a good way. None of the husbands overstayed their welcome, but I also never found myself needing to know more or thinking it was too little information. It was a very satisfying read. If the premise sounds at all interesting to you, then you'll probably enjoy it. I rated The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid 4 stars. Book number 2, Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid. This is a book where I think the marketing and conversations surrounding the book can give a false impression of what it's really about. If you spend any time watching videos or reading articles about books, then you're probably familiar with the inciting incident in the novel. Amira is a 25-year-old black woman living in Philadelphia who works as a babysitter for social media influencer Alexis. One night, Alexis calls with an emergency and Amira actually takes her toddler to a grocery store where she's then accused by a security guard of kidnapping the child. And because this incident is so well known, it might lead you to think that this is solely what the book is about. And while it does influence the events of the book, this feels more like a coming-of-age novel than anything else. And it works really well as a coming-of-age novel. Amira doesn't know what she wants to do with her life, but she feels like she should. All the people in her family have very clear talents and goals that they work towards, and she feels like she should have hers figured out by now. But she doesn't. It's a really interesting look at one of the more malicious aspects of capitalism, that people are only worth the work that they do, and that if you aren't driven towards some career goal, you are somehow less than. That people who just want to make enough money to support themselves and have a little fun are doing something wrong or failing in some way. So yes, Such a Fun Age does explore transactional relationships and the particular racism of upper middle class white individuals who benefit from and work to support existing power structures. It's not marketed completely incorrectly, but the book isn't exactly about that. It's more about Amira trying to figure out who she is, what she likes, and what she wants out of life. It works well as a coming-of-age tale, and I rated it 4 stars. Book number 3, The Vanishing Half by Bennett. This book follows identical twin sisters who grow up together in a small southern black community known as Ballad. The town's origins are based in colorism. Specifically, the goal of the founder was to create a very light-skinned or white-passing community. And this goal is passed down through generations of the residents. When the twins are 16, they run away from home. Before they run away from home, the girls witness the attempted murder of their father by white men. And then while he's recovering in the hospital, he's attacked by these men again and killed. This trauma and how they process it is critical to how each twin chooses her path in dealing with race going forward. And the book does an excellent job of exploring how past trauma shapes our present. This is a multi-generational family saga that follows the sisters and their children from the Deep South to Washington, D.C. to California, and from the 1950s to the 1990s. There are a lot of divergent narrative threads that the author weaves together skillfully at the end. I rated The Vanishing Half 5 stars, and I was thrilled to read that it would be developed into a limited series for TV. In addition to these 3 books, I picked out 3 bonus books on the off chance I actually had a good reading week. And I had a great reading week, so let's talk about that. Bonus book number 1, The Ballad of Black Tom by LaValle. This is a novella, so I don't want to say too much about it. It's of the cosmic horror genre, and it is specifically Lovecraftian, so know that it will make explicit reference to characters and places from the writings of H.P. Lovecraft. Personally, I love when authors from historically marginalized communities use Lovecraft's characters to subvert his writings, but if you don't want to engage with him or his work in any way at all, this novella may not be for you. This novella won the Shirley Jackson Award and was nominated for the Hugo, Nebula, Locust, and Bram Stoker Awards. We follow Charles Thomas Tester as he hustles to put food on the table and keep a roof over his father's head. When he delivers an occult tome to a reclusive sorceress in the heart of Queens, he not only has to deal with supernatural evil, but also the mundane evil of racism. The novella explores race and racism against the backdrop of cosmic horror, specifically how a black man might engage with one of these cosmic entities versus a white man. My biggest complaint with this book is probably that it's too short. Some things felt a little abrupt. I would have liked to have spent more time on Tom's development. That being said, I still rated it 4 stars because I think anyone who appreciates cosmic horror would enjoy this one. Bonus book number 2, One to Watch by Stayman-London. Wow, what the heck was this? This book is marketed extremely poorly. It is not a contemporary romance novel centering a plus-size badass bitch slaying it on national TV and showing the world that fat people exist and that their bodies are valid. Instead, it felt more like a contemporary with some romance, and the main character doesn't love herself and she isn't happy. I found this book to be problematic and depressing and full of harmful tropes about fat women. I do not recommend it to anyone who's a fan of contemporary romance, since it's not that. No thank you, 2 stars. Bonus book number 3, The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This is a young adult horror fantasy that centers the experiences of a young woman living in a puritanical society or cult who discovers dark powers within herself. This was just okay. The premise was very intriguing and there was a lot that could have been done with it, but it's been fairly obvious and surface level in terms of analysis. It also feels a little immature. The main character often thinks to herself the conclusions the author wants the reader to draw. It felt like the author didn't trust the audience to get her themes, so we had our hand held through a lot of the story. I was hoping the book would explore patriarchy and religious fundamentalism, in particular how so-called benevolent authorities tend to devolve into malevolent hierarchies. And it does, just not with anything particularly new to say or really with any significant depth. I was also hoping for the author to look at the labeling of feminists and other anti-authoritarian women as witches by men with power in order to exclude them from society and maintain their malevolent hierarchy. And that doesn't really happen. It's more like men bad, women good. There's no nuance. And I think that's because I thought this was an adult book. I was expecting one set of themes, but instead I got another. And there's nothing wrong with the themes of self-discovery and growing independence that are common to YA. Those are very important, but they're not what I wanted from this book. So if you're in the mood for a YA horror fantasy, maybe check it out. This was still a great reading week. With the exception of one to watch, everything I read was a positive experience. I loved and would recommend almost everything I read this week. So let me know if you have any books on your nightstand or your whole shelf you want to read before the end of the year. And tell me about your 2021 reading goals, or if you've even made any yet. Also, let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them in the comments below. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I play Stardew Valley and I talk about books, so if you like either of those things, this channel may be for you. I hope you're having a wonderful week, and I wish you all the best in your reading adventures.